Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are going to dive into a really powerful way to think about your own mind. We're talking about how to become the architect of your inner world, how to build up your resilience and find a real sense of peace, even when life feels like it's throwing everything it has at you.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever had one of those days, you're just going about your business and then bam, this wave of anxiety or anger or just inner chaos hits you and you have no idea why? It's a feeling we all get. Well, the source material we're looking at today has a really fascinating take on what's actually going on under the surface.
So, the core idea here is that so much of what happens to us is completely out of our control. A random comment from a stranger, some unexpected news, this stuff just happens. And it has the power to really mess with our inner peace. As the source says, it makes the human soul turbulent. So, the real question isn't how we can avoid life, because we can't. It's about how we manage its impact on us. Okay, so first up, let's talk about these disturbances. A great way to think of them is as uninvited guests that just show up at the door of your mind. But what are they really, and where in the world do they come from? I mean, just look at the range here. It could be something so small, like a passing remark from someone you don't even know. Or it could be something huge, like an old desire you thought you'd buried suddenly coming back to life. And the source is really clear about this. Hiding away from the world, trying to live in a bubble, that's not the answer. These things will always find a way to your door. The real key is what you do when they arrive. So, if we can't just stop these triggers from happening, what are we supposed to do? Well, this brings us to this amazing, maybe even surprising idea from our source material, the concept of a thought quarantine. Let's break down how this first line of defense actually works. A thought quarantine is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Look, we can't stop thoughts from showing up on our doorstep, but we absolutely have control over whether we let them in right away. It's all about creating this mental waiting room, a space where you can inspect new thoughts and feelings before you decide to give them a permanent home in your mind. And the source uses this brilliant analogy to make it all click. Think about a bird cellar. They would never, ever introduce a new bird directly into the main cage with all the others, right? No way. They quarantine it first, they check it for any illness, they observe it, they make sure it's not going to cause chaos for the rest of the flock. We need to start treating our thoughts with that same level of care. So, how do you actually do this? It's really a three-step process. First, and this is the simplest part, just pause. When a strong thought or feeling shows up, don't react. Just stop it at the gate and observe it. Second, you evaluate it. Look at it from every angle. What's the logic here? The emotion? And the source even says to look at it from a divine perspective. And finally, you make a conscious choice. Is this thought useful? Does it serve me? If yes, you grant it entry. If not, you let it go. Now listen, this is so important. If we just let every thought rush in without this quarantine process, they don't just vanish. They get in, they settle down into our subconscious, and they cause that exact unexplained turbulence we talked about at the very beginning. You'll feel anxious or upset a day later and have absolutely no clue that it all traces back to one single unchecked thought you let in. All right, so you've quarantined a thought. It's sitting there in your mental waiting room. What happens now? Well, this is where we shift from defense to processing. It's about creating an internal processing room through a really specific kind of conversation with yourself. What's fascinating is the contrast the source material draws here. In a lot of Western models, we process things through unfiltered conversation, confessing thoughts and feelings to a therapist or a guide. But it proposes this other path, a structured internal dialogue where you process those quarantined thoughts by talking with yourself, or what it calls your divine self. And you want to know the best part? You don't need to block out hours of your day for some deep meditation. The source really emphasizes that it's all about consistency, not how long you do it. Seriously, even just 5 minutes set aside for this internal chat can be a total game changer. It's about creating that small, manageable space for some honest self-reflection. So it really boils down to this simple yet incredibly profound action. The solution for understanding the thoughts you put on hold is to talk them through, not necessarily with someone else, but with the deepest part of you. That's how you really start to get a handle on where they came from and what kind of power they have. Okay, let's put this all together now, because thought quarantine and internal dialogue, they aren't two separate party tricks. They're two parts of one single powerful system designed for your mental and spiritual defense. It's a pretty simple equation when you think about it. When you combine a really strong defense with an effective way to process things, the result is a much more stable, much more peaceful inner world. Think of it like this. You're building an inner fortress. The quarantine, that's your powerful gatekeeper, diligently checking everyone and everything that tries to get past the main gate. And the dialogue? That's the wise counsel inside the fortress walls, helping you figure out what to do with the visitors you've allowed into the courtyard. One protects and the other processes. You need both. And that brings us right back to this essential warning. It just perfectly sums up why this whole system is so critical. If you don't have the gatekeeper, rogue thoughts get in, and if you don't have the counsel, they run around causing chaos from the inside. This system is your way of preventing that future, unexplained turmoil before it even starts. So, to wrap this all up, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Just take a moment and think about your day so far. What uninvited guests, what thoughts, what comments from others, what feelings have you already allowed to just walk right through the front gate of your mind without a second glance? Because just recognizing them, that's the very first step to becoming the true architect of your inner world.